Hi guys and welcome to Dial It Up. And today we are doing my absolute most called for requested episode, and that is Line of Fire. Alright, so Line of Fire. This is going to be probably one of the more intensive episodes that I've done and most complicated only because there's a lot that goes into it. So anytime that you're making a ranged combat attack or a power that requires a line of fire to be drawn, these are the rules that we're going to be going through over when you do this sort of thing. I should probably use a character that has range, but pretend that, oh yeah, she has range. So we're gonna go Banshee to Blink. So when you're drawing line of fire, basically when you're using your range and you're gonna be drawing lines all over the map. The map is done on a grid system, so it's actually fairly easy to find out line of fire. So a clear line of fire is as long as the line that's drawn between the two characters that you're attacking to, there's nothing in between. So if you see here, I've got a black, got a black line. That's not gonna help me. So this here is a clear line of fire. There's nothing going on between these two characters, except for my tokens, which we're failing here. Okay. So clear line of fire is pretty simple. There's no special rules to it, nothing going on. It's just you can make your attack. Now the next thing that you're going to be drawing line, and we're just doing standard lines of fire right now, is if you are going through hindering. Now these, we talked about this on my map terrain one. That is any terrain that has this nice green outline on it, that is considered hindering terrain. So a line of fire that goes through hindering terrain will activate any special powers or anything that goes off of the hindering terrain. Hindering terrain itself gives you +1 to your defense when there is a line of fire being drawn between it. Now, whether you are going through the hindering terrain or whether you are physically in the hindering terrain, the line is still being considered hindered. However, if you start in the hindering terrain yourself, the attacker, and you are trying your line of fire out, it's not considered a line of hindered line of fire. So the next standard line of fire that we're going to go over is blocking. And I have a barrier down because I like this map, but it doesn't have enough blocking on it. So if from here to here, just a straight line that you're trying to draw between these blocking terrain, that blocking terrain is going to block it. Now, if, say, Banshee was here and he's trying to draw a line of fire, his line of fire, actually, let's do it here. His line of fire is still going to go through that blocking terrain. If it was like this, where we're going through just the corner, right here, you're not considered going through the blocking terrain because it's on a direct diagonal rather than slightly skewed. This is only going to be considered going through the hindering terrain rather than going through the blocking terrain. However, let's see. Where can I go wonky with this? Is this one going to be wonky? Yeah. If it was like this, even though the blocking itself is on a diagonal, it connects to each other, so you can't get a line of fire through there. It's going to be considered blocking because you're going through these 2 points is going to be considered blocking terrain. So this one here, again, when we're going through the diagonals, is we're not going to be able, or we are going to be able to draw a line of fire through there because the only thing that's restricting the path is going to be this hindering terrain here, and we're not going to go past the blocking. However, I think if we do this way, we're not going to be able to draw the direct diagonal, so that is going to go through the blocking terrain. So it's kind of good to have one of these line of sight guys, these little pulley-doilies, anything that actually just draws a line, any string, anything like that, will help you with determining whether you are going to be going through, which squares you're going to be crossing, and which type of terrain you're going to go over. So that's just the standard on the ground line of fire. And next we're going to look at the wonkiness of elevated. So line of fire on elevated adds in a extra complication when you're drawing the line of fire, which of ours. So for right now on this setup, we have blink down here on elevation 2. Now this is street level. It seems weird, this elevation 2, but that's because the water under the bridge is elevation 1. So when we're going to try and draw, Banshee's going to try and draw a line of fire to blink. But as he's trying to draw here, is that the only way to attack, and I mentioned this on mapped terrain episode, the only way to attack while you're on elevated terrain is if you're on the rim to attack down.
Trolls in the comments, imagine Banshee doesn't have ignore elevated for now.
Yes, please. I probably should be using a different character, but we're just standard characters right now. When you are trying to draw from the elevated terrain, you basically have a triangle of 45 degrees. So when you're drawing your line of fire, you can't go past this diagonal line. So if Blink was here and Banshee's here and he's trying to draw a line of fire, that's outside of his direct diagonal, which means it's going to cross this piece of elevated here and he won't be able to draw a line of fire. Same on the other side, it's going to be the direct diagonal. So it creates this kind of triangle where Banshee can, and that's called attacking on the rim. Now there are two other strange places about attacking on the rim, and that is if you're on the corner, which widens where you can draw your line of fire, rather either from Banshee or to Banshee. When you're out here, you're super exposed when you're on the rim on a corner. However, if that rim was inverted, yes, and we'll throw a Wasp in here because she has range. As I mentioned earlier, this is elevated 1, and Banshee's on the inverted corner. Wasp can't draw a line of fire to him because it's going to go across these two intersecting points of elevated, and that's going to get considered blocked. So when you're looking out on a corner, you can see everything. When you're looking in at a corner, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
You're screwed. When you're on an inverted corner, no lines of fire can be drawn to you unless they are on the same elevation as you. Now the next thing, one thing that they introduced about the time that the Superman set came out, I believe the Smallville Fast Forces was the first map to do it. They introduced multiple elevations, which with that came extra rules. One of the rules was whether or not you are on the rim of an elevation, you can only see to the next elevation down. So right now, even though he adds a direct line of fire to Wasp, he actually can't see her because this elevation 3 here is going to be in the way because he's on elevation 4 and she's on elevation 2. However, if these weren't here, if these were destroyed somehow, or if they were just on a different map,
Were they elevation 2?
Or they were elevation 2. Oh, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
Basically, if he was on elevation 4 and all of this was elevation 2, where she was, he could see her, even though technically elevation 3 is in between them. But if he's not drawing a line of fire through elevation 2, he can draw a line of fire to her. This is going to be very strange because I'm going to use the word line of fire a lot, and it might get confusing, and I apologize for that, but there's no other real way to say drawing a line of fire without using those words.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the hardest points, and that's when you introduce blocking terrain into elevation. Basically, one of the good things to think about is pretty much at any point, if your line of fire crosses blocking terrain, unless you ignore that blocking terrain with some kind of game effect, it's gonna be blocked. So right now, normally Banshee would have a clear line of fire to Wasp. He can't see her because his line of fire is going to cross that blocking terrain. Now, the only time that blocking terrain doesn't block your line of fire is if the attacker and the target are on the same elevation and the blocking terrain is on a lower elevation. Blocking terrain is only as high as the elevation that it is sitting on. So if this right now, the blocking terrain is sitting on elevation 2, they are both on elevation 3, that is a clear line of fire. If she was down here, blocked. Up here, clear. So the next bit of attacking on the elevation is when we're drawing line of fire through hindering terrain. Now because this elevation is higher, you're going to see over the hindering terrain, even though it crosses the line of fire. It's kind of the opposite of what you'd think of with blocking terrain. If you're crossing the hindering, you don't get the bonus. If the character you're targeting is in the hindering, however, then that means the line is going to end up going through hindering and you will get any hindering bonuses, including stealth. So if she was stealth, he could see her. If she was stealth, can't see her because it's gonna enter that hindering terrain for the line of fire. Alright, so the next bit, and this is the part of line of fire that actually confuses a lot of people, and trust me, I just managed to get my head wrapped around this. So, and that is when you are drawing line of fire between different sizes. So we have them lined up as the sizes go in the game itself. So we have a colossal, we have a giant, we have a standard size figure, and a tiny figure. Now in this particular lineup, the way that it is set up, Wasp can see Blink, and she can see Validus, and she can see Giant Man. Blink can see Validus and Giant Man and Wasp, so on and so forth. Everybody in this lineup going up can see each other, and everybody going down can see each other. When a smaller character is drawing a line of fire to a larger character, they are only blocked by a character the same size as them. So a standard size character, so what I mean by that, and I think I said that wrong.
I think you said it wrong.
I said it backwards. So Blink can draw a line of fire to Wasp here because she can see over Wasp to Banshee. She can draw a line of fire to Wasp, and she can draw a line of fire to Banshee.
There you go.
However, Blink can only draw a line of fire to Banshee, but cannot see Wasp because the same size character is blocking to a smaller character. However, if it was a larger character, like Validus, who is a giant, once again, much like with the small, tiny size character, Blink can draw a line of fire to Banshee, and she can draw a line of fire to Validus because he is bigger than Banshee. Once again, she can see Validus, can't see Banshee because Validus is too tall, he is in the way. I'd do this one more time, but I think you guys can get the idea of what I'm trying to say here. So anytime you're drawing line of fire through characters, unless of course you have a game effect that says you ignore characters, you want to be looking for the size. So a smaller size is not going to block your line of fire to a bigger size, but a bigger size is going to block your line of fire to a smaller size. Now there are a few line of fire things that come into play when you get characters that have great size. And we're going to go over that. Sorry. So this is the last final point that I want to make with line of fire, and this is by far the most confusing. And that is the fact that any character with great size, whether they are a colossal or a giant, essentially exist on all elevations. When these rules were initially written, they were only written to take into effect elevation 1 and 2. And then they kept adding elevations and went higher and higher and higher, and didn't modify the wording to accommodate that, even though this is how it works. So when you have someone who has great size, so a giant or a colossal, and they are drawing line of fires, they can draw a line of fire as if they are on any and all elevations. So right now I have Validus sitting here in elevation 1, and I have Blink up here on elevation 4. Validus can see her. This goes against all other rules for line of fire with other characters. Only great size characters can do this because Validus can say that he is drawing line of fire from elevation 4, so that he is matching the elevation for her. Normally, you wouldn't be able to draw a line of fire here because we're crossing elevation 2, we're crossing elevation 3, and then we're going to elevation 4. Any other character size, that would be a blocked line of fire because elevation would be in the way. But because Validus here is saying that, yeah, I'm going to be on elevation 4. He can draw the line of fire, regardless of what's in between. Even if she is not on the rim, or if he is not on the rim doesn't matter with colossal characters. They just draw their line of fires. Now here's where it's tricky. So the one thing that there are two things that stop a colossal or a great size character from drawing line of fire to any elevation. The first one is blocking terrain. If at any point there is a blocking terrain on the same elevation as the colossal or the same elevation as their target, the line of fire is considered block. If that line of fire is going to go through blocking, it is going to be blocked. It is ridiculous, but that's how it is. Blocking, unless you do not ignore blocking for line of fire, blocking is always going to stop you unless you're higher than it. So the final thing that is going to stop a colossal from being able to draw a line of fire, even though they exist on all elevations, is someone on the other side of elevation. So great size characters don't have built-in ignore elevation. When they are drawing line of fire, if the character they are trying to draw a line of fire to is on the other side of an elevation, you're not going to be able to see them because look, elevation 4 is now blocking. He exists on elevation 2 or elevation 3. She exists on elevation 3. Elevation 4 is in the A. Even if he decides that he wants to draw a line of fire from elevation 4, he still can't get down to her. He still can't see her because that's where the rim comes in. So blocking an elevation on the other or the same other side of elevation on the other side of a building, that's when colossal line of fire is stopped. Okay, so the final thing on line of fire, because this is one that is probably good to put into this episode. I'm not going to touch on any other special powers except for this, and that is improved targeting, ignore elevation. When a character can ignore elevation for line of fire, when they have the improved targeting, they act as if they are on the same level of elevation as their target. So normally you would have to shoot from the rim to be able to shoot your target. When you can ignore elevated, you can be anywhere on that elevation and you will just see down, draw your line of fire, you're good. If you're on the other side of elevation, you can still draw your line through that elevation and you are good. Once again, the only thing that's going to stop you is that bloody blocking terrain. So if your target has blocking terrain, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So if your target is blocking terrain in front of them, even though normally you'd be looking down, you're screwed. You're going to be crossing that blocking terrain. That blocking terrain is going to be your bane. That blocking terrain is always going to stop your line of fire. Unless, of course, you ignore the blocking terrain with your targeting. And then, of course, there's the multiple elevations, and that is Banshee sitting here on elevation 1, Blink's up there on elevation 4, but Blanchie says he doesn't care about elevation, and he wants to draw his line of fire, and he can because he's going to ignore it, regardless of how many levels of elevation are between him and his target. Alright, so that was Line of Fire, my most requested episode. I hope I delivered for you guys. I hope I managed to cover everything that you needed me to cover. However, if I didn't, any comments, questions, concerns, anything I didn't go over, as always, comment down below and we'll see you guys for another episode of Dial It Up.
Married with Clix is brought to you by Majestic's Heroclix sales down in Costa Mesa, California. Right now, they're in the middle of storefront change. In the meantime, don't forget to check out their eBay store. If you check the link down below, they always have great Heroclix stuff at fantastic prices, and they'll ship just about anywhere.